A lot of people in Baltimore are very excited about Malaki Starks, Baltimore's first-round draft pick, and he is excited about intercepting a quarterback that the Ravens have had to deal with in the AFC. We talk about that and a lot more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire, here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much, as always, for being here today, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day and your first listen each and every single day. We're free and available on all podcasting platforms. So in video form on YouTube, you can like and subscribe to the channel. In audio form, you can follow along and subscribe wherever you get your podcast. For 5 days a week here on Locked On Ravens, plus more every single weekday, have you covered at 6 a.m. Eastern time with that daily Ravens coverage. And thank you to all the everydayers, first-time listeners, and if you're somewhere in the middle, thank you for tuning in as well. Today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Here with me today on this Thursday, it is Bobby Trosset, a.k.a. Bobby Baltimore of the Vault podcast. He also has his own YouTube channel, Bobby Baltimore, and he knows the grind of daily Ravens content, much like I do over here on Locked On Ravens. Bobby, it's great to have you back on the show. I know you're a veteran of the show, but it's been a while since you've been back, and we have a ton to talk about because this Ravens team, they never sleep.
No doubt. Maybe you and I don't either. And this is the least that I could do to return the favor after you helped out big time in a crunch, in a pinch on day 3 of the draft. Allowed me a little potty break. I was solo hosting for those that maybe missed it. You came up big. You came up clutch. What else is new? It's great to be back with you, partner.
I appreciate you being here with me. And again, the least I could do for someone, and I know, Bobby, you grinded out those 3 days of draft coverage. Doing a live show, I mean, what was it, 15 hours of streaming for you? 16? Like, the Ravens, they kept you busy. I mean, 11 picks, that's a lot of guys to go through.
Yeah, for sure. I think it crept up towards 20 hours of combined live coverage, which we had never sniffed over a 3-day period. So, yeah, I think it was just something that was unique, right? 11 picks. Now, granted, who knows? Maybe they'll have 12 next year. I have no idea. I know they're going to have like 5 or 6 in the 5th next year. So we'll all just brace ourselves for the number, the overall number. We know that they like to stockpile these things. They are coveted assets, and it's ultimately the way that they build their team. But yeah, this to me just felt like a unique year. There were several obviously priorities going into the draft, and I thought they addressed every single one of them for the most part. I know that most folks are looking for that Michael Pierce replacement, that depth, right, at defensive tackle, at nose tackle behind Travis Jones. That remains to be seen who that player will be. But ultimately, the secondary on paper, of course, all of this is on paper, which is why it's so tricky and kind of laughable when you see grades go around, right? It's like, all right, well, what are we actually measuring here? It's all on paper. None of these guys have played an NFL snap. But to me, if you told me, a few weeks ago that they would address their secondary, that they would address edge rusher, that they would address multiple corners, right, with other pieces sprinkled in throughout those 11 picks, to me, that would feel like a win.
And you look across a bunch of different draft guys. I mean, Bobby, if you had told me the Ravens would have gotten 2 top 15, top 20 players in the first 2 rounds here with Malaki Starks and Mike Green, I'd be telling you you're crazy. There's no way that those 2 guys fall in those spots. And sure, Baltimore was able to go and get those 2.
Sure. You got that aspect of it too, with the risk reward, obviously balancing game that they're playing with a Mike Green. They did their homework accordingly, and we'll see, right? We're living in 2025. Just because they felt clean, they felt comfortable, they felt, like they were able to move forward. You just don't know in 2025 if things can change on a dime. For their sake, for Mike's sake, for this entire situation's sake, you hope that's not the case. But for right now, I think he is easily, universally looked at as this year's sort of darling, right? Sort of favorite pick because of, I think, what they've been lacking since Terrell Suggs left Baltimore. And that is, that true presence. Am I calling him sizzle right out of the gate? No, of course not. But he is somebody that brings in this level of intensity, this explosiveness and production, which is not something that they've had in recent years when they've taken swings at edge rusher. And obviously, we all know the name that comes to mind first, I think, when you say a comment like that. It is a Dafe Owe. Yes, he's coming off a standout campaign. Yes, he's on the 5th-year option. And yes, he's a double-digit sack guy at this point in his career, but I think he's left a lot of us wanting more, which I think is fair. What's also fair is that he has developed, and I think Chuck Smith has a lot to do with that. So anyway, the Mike Green experiment is going to easily be the most compelling part of this I would say, off-season program. And once minicamp gets started, I think we all know what we're going to try to be observing from afar.
Yeah, it feels like he could make or break this class, but Malaki Starks certainly as well is going to be someone that is going to hopefully have a huge impact year one. Obviously, he's NFL ready, and he went on SportsCenter. And Bobby, I know that you're familiar with this clip already. But Malaki Starks goes on SportsCenter and was asked which quarterback he's looking forward to intercepting the most, who he's looking forward to going and getting. And I think some people would have thought, oh, he's going to say Patrick Mahomes. Like, that's the guy that people look to. Well, he did not say Patrick Mahomes, Bobby. He said Josh Allen. And he said the reason was because he got a few teammates up there in Buffalo. So it'd be fun and a really cool moment for me. So singling out Josh Allen, not in like a disrespectful way or anything, obviously, but I think that one proves the respect that Allen has across the league. Were you surprised his answer wasn't Mahomes?
Sure. Anytime it's not Patrick Mahomes in today's day and age, who's literally on a Tom Brady track, I think it gives you some pause, right? But at the same time, hey, this is the reigning MVP, regardless of whether or not you thought it was MVP or ultimately given due to voter fatigue. He's the reigning MVP of the league, and he's ultimately the quarterback of the team that bounced this team that we cover on a daily basis out of the playoffs a lot earlier than I think a lot of us expected them to be. So from that lens, I get it. And then, hey, quite a way to endear yourself to the fan base too, because we know that there was plenty of crossover, Kevin, and I'm not telling you anything you don't already know in the social media realm between the two fan bases, between the two organizations. There was plenty of it. And they saw each other twice. Who got the last laugh? The guys up in Western New York. So if nothing else, a great way to show your inner competitive spirit and fire. Again, there was nothing disrespectful about it. Matter of fact, he actually said it in a very non-confrontational way. Like he's not a very, at least behind the mic, right? When he's on an on-camera setting in front of a microphone, he's not exactly boisterous. I think he's confident. He comes across to me as a humble person, and I think that's really resonated with this fan base so far.
Definitely. He seems respectful. And again, the respect that both Lamar, Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, et cetera, they command that respect throughout the league. But obviously, Baltimore, this is a team that needs to realize this goal here. If they're competing for Super Bowls, and Josh Allen is a team, that Bills team is a team that they need to go through. Obviously, the ultimate team right now is Kansas City. I know some people have kind of soured all them after what happened in the Super Bowl. I am not so quick to write that team off. I don't think you can be after the history that Baltimore and Kansas City have had over the last handful of years. But Bobby, we've seen the Ravens struggle with turnovers in the playoffs, in the postseason. And that's not just an offensive thing. That is also a defensive thing. Baltimore has a -13 turnover differential in the playoff losses in the Lamar Jackson era. They've only forced 2 turnovers Baltimore's defense has in those losses. Malaki Starks comes in with ball skills. He comes in with the ability to turn his head for the football, unlike a certain Ravens cornerback that is now residing in New Jersey or playing football in New Jersey for the Jets. I feel like Starks allowing Kyle Hamilton to move back to his more natural position as a Swiss Army knife in Baltimore's defense, him being able to come up and run support and help, having versatility to play down in the slot if you need. I would not be shocked Baltimore and Buffalo play again this year, and they might meet again in the postseason in 2026. I wouldn't be shocked if Malaki gets an opportunity or two to intercept Josh Allen and make those early career dreams come true, because I think that he's going to mean a lot to how this defense operates.
Yeah, nor would I. I think that, well, what we know is for sure that they're going to face off in Buffalo, in Orchard Park in the regular season, and then it's just up for grabs in terms of whether or not they'll face off in January. Hey, for my money, let's get a rematch going. I would love to see, sort of a rematch of these two teams, of these two quarterbacks, of these two defenses, so on and so forth. Obviously, the time and the date, by the way, is TBD. 1 week from when we're recording this right now is the schedule release, which is the 14th. So certainly look forward to that. We'll be doing live streaming that night. I'm sure you will be active that day as well. But as far as, I was going to say Nate Wiggins because he was on my mind. I think there's going to be a similar type of plate and a process given to Malaki the same way you saw it with Nate. And as the year went on, you saw that them continue to entrust and ultimately divvy up more of a role for Nate Wiggins. I would expect that the Malaki will take his lumps. He'll have his rookie moments. He'll have a learning curve as well, but he's got such a high IQ and so many high leverage reps under his belt. George is a factory. We get that. I mean, the amount of freaking prospects that come out of Athens to the National Football League is countless every single year. What Kirby Smart has done there is nothing short of exceptional. And I think that absolutely is meaningful. I'm not saying that Nate didn't get big time reps as well with Clemson, but George is on another level. I think we can all agree, particularly in recent years. And so Malaki is going to come in and not only be a sponge, not only be coachable, but I think capable because of the amount of experience with that championship pedigree, of course, under his belt as well. I've heard he can even play corner in a pinch. So I love what this on paper does for Zach Orr, which is ultimately the freedom as a defensive play caller. Hey, we want to use Kyle in literally all three phases of this defense right now, because that's where we feel like he is most matchup friendly. That's where we feel like he is most capable of taking over games defensively. So on paper, again, it's all on paper at this point, but on paper, you like the situation that Malaki and the Ravens defense is in.
And I think that instant impact is going to be huge, because at this point, Baltimore, one, is competing for Super Bowls, and you don't want to have projects at this point. To get contributions like they got from Nate Wiggins, from Roger Rosengarten, and hopefully we can extend that this season to Malaki Starks and Mike Green, that's how the Ravens have to operate, because, they can't sign every free agent under the sun like the Patriots did this offseason or other teams have done in previous offseasons. They just operate differently, and they trust their guys. And it's not like they're a team that would make those big splashes anyway. In fact, some of the biggest splashes they've made over the last handful of seasons have backfired in terms of guys like Earl Thomas and Marcus Williams. And the fact that the Ravens took a safety in the first place, Bobby, kind of has to do with the fact that they needed guys because some of those signings didn't work out for them.
No doubt. You're making me think about this response that I've seen from a certain percentage of people online that criticize Eric for stockpiling the picks the way that he does. And again, he had 11 of them. His front office had 11 total selections over the 3 days in the draft. To me, it's very puzzling that you can be critical of a team for essentially piling up as many chances so that you can take swings. Because if you have your core intact the way that they do, and you plan on keeping that core intact as well in the near future, with the Lamars, of course, on deck, which is what you just alluded to with his extension. You would think a Derrick Henry extension will get done at some point, but the Saquon one in Philadelphia, I'm sure, has muddied the water. But you would think, knowing that that's the case, and they have hit on their core, and their core is intact, that you would want more picks. Because if you hit on at least even a percentage of the 11 picks that you had this year for this upcoming fall, then you got more rookie deals, which is ultimately going to allow you to be more flexible as a general manager when it comes to the allocation and the financial component of all of this. So that's puzzling to me. I've seen some of that. Maybe it's just the vocal minority, but it's popped up on my timeline. I'm sure you're the same way as well.
I think, to me, there were definitely some people clamoring for, hey, let's trade 6 of our picks. If you're Baltimore, hey, let's have this team trade 6 picks away for a higher first round pick or something like that, or just continue that and end the draft with 6 or 7 picks. I was of the mindset that, hey, you know what, 9 or 10 picks might be a sweet spot for you. 11, that's a lot of picks. But to your point, you take talent, you figure out the rest later. They stack positions consistently, and that's why they are so good, because they have so much depth across the board, and that is why they are going for a 3rd straight AFC North championship. And coming up, an AFC North foe of theirs just got significantly worse in the Pittsburgh Steelers. So Bobby and I will react to the George Pickens trade coming up next on Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by Gametime. There's nothing like the atmosphere of an NBA playoff game. Every bucket, every defensive stop, every moment feels huge. It's electric in the arena, and with Gametime, you can be part of it without the stress of last-minute ticket hunting. Game Time makes it fast and easy to get playoff tickets, even when demand is sky high. Prices on the app actually go down as tip-off gets closer, and their last-minute deals can save you up to 60%. And here's why I use Game Time. You have last-minute deals where you can save it up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and more. Plus, the all-in pricing means no surprise fees at checkout. What you see is what you pay. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Again, terms apply. Create an account, redeem code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Back on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher and Bobby Trosset still talking Ravens football with you. Bobby, the Ravens going for their third straight AFC North crown, which would be the first time in the division's history that a team would win 3 straight AFC North crowns. It feels like a lot of people feel like Pittsburgh is their biggest threat. Now, I think a lot of people think Baltimore's the team to beat, the favorite to win the division this year again. Cincinnati's defense has questions. Cleveland, we might have to do a whole nother show on Cleveland because of how crazy it is over there right now. But Pittsburgh is that team that feels like without fail, once per year, Baltimore loses a game like 10-9 and that game gets slopped up. George Pickens has made big plays against them over the course of his career. Well, they won't have to worry about that anymore as Pickens is now off to Dallas to pair up with CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott. Pittsburgh getting a third and a fifth back for Pickens and a sixth. I think a lot of people, Bobby, were wondering, hey, DK Metcalf and George Pickens, that duo is pretty fearsome. But Pickens in the last year of his deal, apparently Mike Tomlin did not want Pickens in Pittsburgh anymore. This is not the first time Pittsburgh has traded a receiver due to behavioral issues. They're familiar with this. Was it a shock that Pickens was moved to you? And what do you think it does for Pittsburgh's short-term chances here in the North?
To me, the writing was on the wall for sure when they gave DK Metcalf, which was so uncharacteristic of their organizational philosophy right over the years, that kind of money. I mean, that was ridiculous money. And with Pickens coming towards the end of his rookie deal, I can only imagine what the conversations were like or what the agent speak was like. Those representation, the two parties speaking, we all remember, or maybe I do because I listened to the entire press conference. Maybe some of you guys did as well. When the Ravens beat the Steelers in the wild card round in January, George Pickens' lasting impression on that final press conference was essentially like, I don't want to be here. Now, I'm paraphrasing that, but I would imagine that's pretty much a microcosm of what the offseason has been like behind the scenes. And then they go get DK Metcalf, and I'm sure that was just shot through the moon. I got some numbers for you. You and me both know that Pickens has been a Ravens slayer, okay? And the numbers back it up. 5 career games. If I'm not mistaken, he missed one of the 2 that they played last year. He was a little bit banged up. 5 games, 19 receptions on 29 targets. This is 5 games against the Ravens. 326 receiving yards, a touchdown for an average of 17.2 yards per reception. Wow. He's had his way. He's had his way with Brandon Stevens. He's had his way with Marlon Humphrey. He's had his way with the Ravens secondary. And while DK Metcalf sure as hell could as well, and if they don't figure out how to defend the big play this upcoming year to start the season, they did, of course, down the second half stretch, then DK is going to have a circus. He's going to have a field day. But the fact that they don't have both of those pieces now, to me, and Sarah and I had this conversation earlier this week, to me, it actually leapfrogs. If we're counting and ranking wide receiver rooms, it's Cincinnati, of course. Everybody's looking up at Cincinnati in the division. But I think Baltimore leapfrogs Pittsburgh based on this move. And the reason why is, to me, DK Metcalf, he's his own explosiveness. He's his own circus freak in his own right. We get that. There's nothing he can't do on the football field. But he's only one guy at the end of the day. And if you can sell out to stop him, I just like the likes of the complementary duo that Bateman and Flowers have become, and you add in the veteran savvy and kind of a contested catch-winning guy in DeAndre Hopkins, and you're flanked by Tylan Wallace, Devontae Walker, and LaJonte Wester. To me, that's a lot more of a capable, deep wide receiver room than what Pittsburgh has right now. So Do I think the Ravens are better off? They've been better off on a number of ways this offseason with certain circumstances that have taken place in the division. Abdul Carter not going to Cleveland in the draft and lining up opposite side, right? Myles Garrett. That's a win. Travis Hunter not ended up in the AFC North. That's a win. And then a George Pickens exiting. Those are the three things that come to mind just within the last few weeks that have been off-season wins for the Ravens. And ultimately, they're still going to have to deal. Like I said, they're still going to have to deal with Metcalf. And if Aaron Rodgers is ultimately under center, to me, Pittsburgh is still the stiffest competition because I don't know if Cincinnati's gotten better defensively. They took some swings, big swings, particularly on Shamar Stewart in the draft. So I'm not convinced that they're going to be like better overnight defensively, and they're still going to have to put up 30-plus points. So long story short is you get the quarterback situation, you bring Rodgers in. I still view the Steelers as the most stiff competition for the Ravens.
They have guys still available. They could bring in Keenan Allen potentially, Amari Cooper potentially, and I'm sure that they will look, Gabe Davis was just cut yesterday by Jacksonville. So we will see if Pittsburgh makes another veteran move. But I think people were wondering, okay, Pickens and DK together, man, that's an explosive wide receiver room in more ways than one. And that gave people a little pause of like, man, that's why you go and take Malaki Starks in the first round because of all that talent. Talk about Cincinnati. Yeah. It's Pittsburgh with those two. Yeah. But now it just kind of puts Pittsburgh in a way. Did they get better? Sure. This offseason, I thought they had a good draft, and I think adding DK helps them out. But they're losing a very good receiver in Pickens. Obviously the off-field stuff and behavioral stuff, that does play a part in all of this. But I think that them losing Pickens is going to have a major impact on how those games are played or how they could have been played compared to him being on the roster versus not.
I should follow up on one aspect of this that you just quickly alluded to there, and that's probably an area that I would think Mike Tomlin feels as if they just improved, and that is the off-field antics, the sideline antics, the headache that George Pickens has caused throughout his 3 years in Pittsburgh. He just has. And when you put him in a wide receiver room with DK Metcalf, who is no saint himself when it comes to semantics, both on and off the field, that to me felt like a mixture that just wasn't ultimately going to be a concoction that was leading to success. So perhaps they've gotten better when it comes to the locker room environment, but the talent so often, we've seen it with Deontay Johnson, often trumps, right? The talent will trump whatever the hell is happening internally at times, and teams will look past it. Literally, Deontay Johnson is the perfect exhibit A, Kevin. He's getting another opportunity with Cleveland. We didn't even mention that when we were talking about the wide receiver core in divisions, but maybe the reason why we didn't is because he's on the fourth or fifth team and under a calendar year, and they gave him the veteran minimum as if to say, hey, we don't trust your you-know-what, so here's the veteran minimum. Can you help us out? If so, let's see what happens. The Ravens are like, hell yeah, we're going to get a comp pick, So.
I tell you what, that's exactly the thing you're talking about with a guy like Deontay Johnson. You're right, fifth team in a calendar year and third AFC North team. For a guy like George Pickens, on the field, he gives you all sorts of problems, opponents. Like, he will dice your defense up like we saw him do against the Ravens. But Pittsburgh just didn't feel like it was worth it. They didn't feel like it. I thought that the return, honestly, was pretty underwhelming for me if I'm Pittsburgh, Bobby, because if they had decided to just be troopers about it and go through it for another year, it feels like they could have gotten a third-round comp pick anyway for him. Like, I just think that it was so bad there between them that they just said, we'll just get our value and we're going to just disconnect here. And that's what it is. And it feels like, Bobby, the AFC North is trying to catch up to Baltimore. And I think that's what we saw in the draft this year, where all three AFC North foes for the Ravens took a defensive lineman in the first round. Obviously, Cleveland, you mentioned, it wasn't Abdul Carter, it wasn't Travis Hunter, it was Mason Graham at number 5, defensive lineman. You mentioned Shamar Stewart at 17 for Cincinnati, and then Derek Harmon, that was Pittsburgh's pick at 21. So Baltimore, we talked about it in the first part of the show. They're trying to catch up to Kansas City. They're trying to fend off Buffalo, but it feels like they are pretty cemented in that top spot in the North unless something catastrophic happens this season, or a team like Cincinnati can figure it out defensively, or Pittsburgh can figure it out. I mean, do you feel that way, that Baltimore should be the heavy favorite in the division right now?
Oh yeah, for sure. And again, they'll leave the door open if they start the way they did last year, going 0-2 and climbing their way out of that. And they'll also leave the door open if for whatever reason things leak over from the first half of last year with their pass defense and defending the big play, right? And the communication on all three levels and the underneath pass coverage being an issue and Trenton Simpson kind of slowing things down for Roquan Smith. Look, I'm on record, and this should be a conversation for another time. I think the world of Trenton. I really do. But the more you watch tape of Teddy Buchanan, that dude has a certain level of fluidity that I think he's going to earn his right through special teams, as one tends to do in a John Harbaugh-led team. And do not be surprised if he is knocking on Trenton's door with his play at some point this year. I really like Teddy Buchanan in early May.
He's a coverage guy, someone that you mentioned the fluidity that he has to his game, and someone that, we've seen, especially early on in the season, Bobby, it just felt like that Ravens linebacker core just got torched in the slot. Buchanan is someone that has the athleticism to prevent some of that. So their 11 pick draft class, they address a lot of different needs. And I think that they shored up a lot of, I wouldn't say like massive holes or anything. They didn't really have a massive hole, but the little plugs, I think they plugged in those holes pretty nicely. So coming up in the final part of the show, we'll talk a little bit more about Baltimore's draft class, as well as the almost Ravens team gaining another player with one of the guys who could have been a Raven revealing that he was almost a part of Baltimore's team. So be sure to stay tuned. We got a lot coming up here on the show. First, this show is brought to you by Upwork. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more. Experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives businesses flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, including IT, AI, web development, and marketing. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple and affordable. If you need help in a marketing campaign, Upwork can connect you with a freelance expert who delivers incredible results. And posting your job is free and simple. With the day, you have multiple qualified candidates to choose from. And instead of hiring full-time, Upwork helps find affordable, top-tier freelancers to scale your business efficiently. So visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com. Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Again, visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's UPWORK.com. Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. Back, Locked On Ravens with Bobby Trosset. I am Kevin Ostreicher. And Bobby, I don't know if you're familiar with the almost Ravens team, but it feels like there are a lot of situations, or there have been a lot of situations. I know Terrell Owens probably headlines this team, but where the Ravens could have maybe had a player and then maybe a team jumps in front of them in the draft, or something falls through, or they decide to sign somewhere else. Guys like Darius Slayer on this team, Jadeveon Clowney once over before actually becoming a member of the team years later. DeAndre Hopkins has been, Julio Jones has been. Well, Rob Gronkowski has now entered his name into the ring because he, on the Dudes on Dudes podcast, he revealed that he was going to be picked by the Ravens. He revealed the Ravens were going to select him in the 2010 NFL draft. Now, Baltimore that year, they had the 25th pick. They ended up trading back with Denver. That was the pick that Denver used on Tim Tebow. So Baltimore, they then had the 43rd overall pick, but Gronkowski said that the Patriots caught wind of that. They moved up one spot ahead of Baltimore. They took Rob Gronkowski, and Baltimore had to settle for Sergio Kindle, who obviously fell down the stairs. He was never the same. Really, just it flamed out in Baltimore rather quickly after that moment happened. And Kindle is, unfortunately, based off of that circumstance, considered one of the bigger draft busts in Baltimore history. That was also in the draft that they were reportedly going to take Des Bryant, but that whole situation got foiled as well. So just not a great time for them. Could you imagine, Bobby, Rob Gronkowski being in Baltimore, catching passes from Joe Flacco, and the fact that he was such a big part of the Patriots and their Super Bowl teams during his time there? It can only kind of spark the thought of, could the Ravens have kind of gotten a Super Bowl or two more if he had been a member of that team?
Well, it's so fitting because they've already been so dominant at that position, tight end. Yeah. Throughout the entire existence of this franchise. You know, the Todd Heaps, the Dennis Pittas, the Mark Andrews. We'll see if Isaiah Likely's in that grouping when all is said and done. And by the way, they did end up getting Des Bryant on the team years later,
right?
A decade plus later, which was a disaster.
Oh,
but, by the way, I would add to your almost Ravens team, it was times two, because obviously he started his career in Baltimore, but Zadarius Smith the second time around
good pull.
Should be on that list.
Yep.
And then who else did I have on that list? It's interesting though. I got to think about who else.
I'm gonna pull up. I made a tweet maybe 2 years ago. While you're finishing your point, I'm gonna pull it up and I'm gonna try to read off some of these names.
Yeah. Well, I think it goes without saying that if you gave Joe Flacco a Rob Gronkowski, okay, the ultimate security blanket, the ultimate moose out there in the middle part of your field, and a willing blocker, and somebody that's just galvanizing, right? He's just a galvanizing figure that it does kind of prompt the what if question. What if? Who else is on that list?
Oh man, so this was one I put out 2023, so almost 2 years ago. Derrick Henry, when he was almost traded to the Ravens, now they have him and it's all good. But Derrick Henry, Josh Jacobs, there was reported interest there. Terrell Owens was one. Cooper Kupp, the Ravens were going to take Cooper Kupp, but then the Rams ended up getting him. There was a story, I can't remember where the story was, but about that. Michael Brockers, when that whole thing fell through.
Yes, I remember that
Raven
one.
There.
Yep.
Gerald McCoy, there was interest before he went to the Panthers. Okay. And felt like he was going to go there. Terrell Suggs, when he was released by the Cardinals, and there was this whole thing about if he was going to return to Baltimore to try to chase the Super Bowl with them that 2019 season, and he ended up going to Kansas City instead. Bobby Wagner, I remember that was a whole thing that we talked about for a while a couple of years ago when he was released by Seattle. Paul Warlow, if you remember, signed with them for like a day or two and then retired. So I threw him on this list. Let's see, Jalen Ramsey, because that was the whole thing before Marcus Peters was, the Ravens going to get Jalen Ramsey. Darius Slay, he's put it on record that he was almost a member of the Ravens.
Yes.
Jamal Adams, there was that whole situation. Tyrann Mathieu, I remember they were interested in him, but ended up going with Marcus Williams. And then Jason Garrett, because obviously he was the one that was pinned for that Baltimore job until he didn't want it. He went to Dallas, and the Ravens ended up getting a guy by the name of John Harbaugh, who Bobby you might have heard of before. So a lot of guys on that list. And I am honestly sure we're going to have a lot more in the future years here.
Fantastic job chronicling this. You triggered my memory on a number of those, including Bobby Wagner, because that's when I had just launched into full-time content creation. If I'm remembering correctly, it was the off season of 2022. It was like the spring of 2022 when some of that was going on. But who knows? Covering this team year round as we do on a daily basis, it's highly concerning for our memory banks, I would say.
There's a lot you got to keep up with. And honestly, Bobby, I took this 2 steps further. I had a graduate list. So Des Bryant, you mentioned, is on that graduate list. Jadeveon Clowney is on that graduate list. Le'Veon Bell, if you remember when he was going through his whole thing, he was almost a member of the Ravens before he signed with the Jets. There was all this reported, he's going to go to Baltimore. He went to the Jets, and then obviously they got him in, when their entire running back room just got decimated. So that was an unfortunate way to go through that. And then Ryan Grant was my honorable mention, who the Ravens signed but failed his physical. And a lot of people were wondering, because that was at the time, it was like a 4-year, $30 million deal, 4-year, 28, something like that. That was very controversial because I think a lot of people put 2 and 2 together and said, was this really a failed physical, or was this just them maybe having getting some cold feet at the end there? So you're right. This team gives you no shortage of things not to talk about. There's always something to talk about with this team. And Bobby, I appreciate you popping on with me here, talking about it with me. On the way out, you're busy. You're a busy man. Tell people where they can find you, what you're working on, and what you have coming up this offseason, because I know the sleep is not there for me. I know you also grind it out as well, and there's a lot to talk about, and you have a lot to talk about also.
Oh, you and I are always on lockstep. I think we have mutual appreciation, and we caught up pre-show, just being like, "Yo, how you doing?" Because it's just like, "Yeah, how are you doing?" The last time I saw you was forever ago in person, and the last time I talked to you was in a live format when I was on hour 18 of 20 on day 3 of the coverage, the draft. So it goes without saying, we appreciate each other's grind for sure. As you mentioned off the top, Sarah Ellison and I have a show. We're about 3 years into it. This July will be 3 years. It's daily. It's live. It's called The Vault, 12 noon Eastern. Really enjoy that opportunity. Just this week, we sat down virtually, of course, with the defensive coordinator at Arizona. He's the former head coach of the New Mexico football program, and he was the special teams coordinator at Arizona last year. His name is Danny Gonzalez, and he matters because he worked closely with Tyler Loop. And as you know, the Justin Tucker era is now over, and it is officially Tyler Loop's job to lose. I don't believe this undrafted kicker out of Wyoming will seize that opportunity. It'd be shocking if the Ravens spent 6th-round draft capital and he doesn't end up, getting every single opportunity to prove himself. So I just thought that was a super compelling, enlightening conversation, provided a little bit of context into his 5 misses last year. He had just over a 78% field goal percentage, and he did make from 62. He's really kind of believed to be the biggest leg, the strongest leg in this year's kicker class. I know, we're both obviously very highly anticipating what this guy's all about. And between the ears, from a mental fortitude standpoint, not only that he's going into this Super Bowl or bust era in Baltimore, but he's succeeding the most accurate kicker of all time. So good stuff there from Danny Gonzalez. You can go check it out on the Vault. Like you said, I'm trying to do content as much as I can as well on my second channel, Bobby Baltimore. That's also where I can be found across all social platforms. So appreciate you for having me on, dude.
Absolutely. And the links to all Bobby's work in the description down below. Be sure to go check him out, support his work. He is a grinder, and he deserves your support. So be sure to go check him out and check out what he and Sarah do over at the Vault. Bobby, appreciate you popping on, and I appreciate everybody for listening and watching today to Locked On Ravens. Coming up, we'll be talking more Ravens football tomorrow to round out the week. So be sure to stay tuned, hit the like and subscribe button in video form, and follow along and subscribe in audio form on the way out. And I'll see you right back here tomorrow on Locked On Ravens.